Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chris? Here. Haley? Here. Jesse?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Eddie? Here. Shannon? Thank you. Eva? Here. Michael?
Here.
Okay. Do we have any agenda adjustments?
Yes, I just have one adjustment. We'd like to add Jennifer Clavette to the employment, letter A, under item 7, for food service director. That's Jennifer Clavette. That's Clavettee.
I make a motion to approve the agenda adjustment as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Next up, approval of the minutes. I make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of December 4th. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Next up, presentations. 8th grade trip to Six Flags New England.
Good afternoon, good evening. Zachary, middle school principal. In your packet, you'll see a letter to the school board in regards to a trip that's requested for the 8th grade. Last month, I went to the PAC meeting with the Parent Advisory Council, and there were several parents there that requested to go to Six Flags, so I put it out to the students. 80% of the students requested to go to Six Flags as their class trip. That would be at the end of the year. The goal would be to go in late May or early June, assuming we can fundraise the $17,000 it would cost to go. If we can't fundraise the funds, we would do what we did last year, which is a trip to Funtown, Urban Air, and Trampoline Park. And the additional funds would go to the high school to be part of their senior activities when they get to the 2028 graduation.
And just to clarify, this is a day trip?
This would be a day trip. They'd be leaving really early and arriving back really late.
Mr. Freeman, how much does the class already have saved?
They have fundraised at this time none, because we don't do the fundraising until we get a trip approved. Because when you go out to fundraise to different individuals, you want to make sure you can say we're fundraising for this reason. Last year they were able to raise $7,000 in a matter of 2 weeks. I think they can do it though.
What fundraiser plans do you have?
It's all through the Parent Advisory Council. One of the things they do is a lock-in, for instance. Each student provides $40. Students that can't pay for it, we let them come anyways. They can stay at the middle school for overnight. They get to enjoy the Nintendo Switch room. They get to enjoy dodgeball. That raises $2,000. And then different fundraisers planned by the parents and students.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Freeman?
Thank you very much.
I make a motion to approve the request for the 8th grade trip to Six Flags. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any abstentions? Absolutely. Motion carries. Absolutely. Next up, the public comments from the last meeting. There was no specific questions that were raised. There was some great commentary that we received, so thank you. As far as committee acknowledgements, I just wanted to acknowledge and say how thankful we are for Shannon for the many years of service that she has helped us with on the board. I know that RSU 87 did a board realignment, and so Debbie will be the one to continue to come to us on a go forward. And so thank you so much for all your input that you provide. It's really, really valuable to us, and I'm thankful. Yeah. Well, thank you. We appreciate all your input that you provide to us. Did anybody else have any committee acknowledgements? We'll go right now.
Just wanted to thank parents and staff and community members who are reaching out, communicating. I think we do our job better when we hear from people, and I want them to know they're always welcome to reach out and be heard, and so I support that, and I appreciate hearing those voices. And to the principals and staff who have reached out and provided opportunities for parents to be, I think specifically the elementary school, they offered a lot of options for parents to come in and do crafts and be part of that. And I like the open dialogue that they're creating this year. So.
I just wanted to give an update on what happened in December and January at the high school. So on December 6th, there was a MAC meet that was hosted here at Hermon High School, and it was Penobscot County Schools. And I'm not sure who won, but there was a lot of students in here, and I helped with checking in and making sure that everything went smoothly. So that was a really great opportunity for volunteering. And then another volunteer opportunity was when the Key Clubbers went to Sam's Club to do bell ringing for the Salvation Army. There was also a holiday concert, which was just bands and choir. There was the holiday community party, which had 53 elementary school students and around 25 volunteers. Key Club did their annual Walk for Cancer, and they raised about $570 for breast cancer. Key Club also did a charity tree, which student council contributed to as well, and they had tags on the tree to purchase gifts for local families. And then recently there was the Poetry Out Loud school-wide event, and I'm happy to announce I won the school-wide event. So I'll be representing Hermon High School at the Bangor Arts Change Center in Bangor in February.
Congratulations, that's awesome. Michael?
So I was talking about this earlier, there's been a large improvement in participation for the indoor track team, so that's really nice to see. It went from 10 kids last year to around 30 kids participating in it now. The basketball team's been doing very well, especially for it being such a young team, mostly freshmen and sophomores on the team. The winter cheer team is also doing very well. I know that's a big thing here. And the Science Olympiad is starting up soon, so I know a lot of kids will be excited for that.
Excellent job, and I think you forgot one because you've been knocking it out of the park with wrestling, so awesome job there. It's great to see. And it's just great to see all the events that our students are involved in. You guys are amazing, so keep up the good work. Next, we're going to move to public comments. This is an opportunity for the members of the public to comment on agenda items, contribute info that may be of interest to the school committee, or ask clarifying questions. Please wait to be recognized and identify yourself before speaking. It's not the time to register complaints or promote a personal agenda. Please remember that you may not identify any person by name or job function. And so just going to make sure that somebody's keeping time for me here. And we'd like to welcome Terry Ham-Morris. Good evening.
I have a question. I have a couple of
Can you just use
questions.
the mic, Terry? Sorry.
I have a couple of questions and I will be succinct. Why have the audit documents not been passed on to the auditor as it is known that they are ready regarding the IT problem? The town manager and the town council in particular should be given these documents, made aware of what's going on. When things are deliberately being held up, one can only surmise there may be nefarious purposes, and I ask if that's true. My question number 2 is, for the parents and for the school, is there awareness that through the IT system, there is a possibility that your children's computers may be gateways into having cameras in their rooms and your homes without you being aware someone is watching? There are many implications here, which you can only imagine. Also, did the school know that the recent ransomware attacks, yes, that's multiple, on the IT system made very private information public, social security information, health information, and a myriad of other things of parents and children? And by law, and this question is addressed to the superintendent, by law, he is supposed to make the community aware of this problem publicly and immediately. So I asked the parents, when did you know, and was it blasted to all who needed to know by the superintendent? Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Sean McBride.
Sean McBride, Hermon. I sued Hermon School Department for willful Freedom of Access Act withholding back on March 3rd, 2023. More commonly known as FOIA in Maine. This law is to ensure everyone's right to know about public information. FOIA is how I found out your Vice Chair, Chris McLaughlin, discriminated against a church, which led to another lawsuit. Maine has a very simple law that allows transparency of public documents, even those that are copyrighted. Several court cases have proven this. I've now proven this. The requested binder was a 25th annual new superintendent's workshop created by Drummond Woodson, attended by your civil servant, your employee, Superintendent Micah Green. The issue at hand is when I requested this public information back in December of 2022, he refused to comply with Maine law. He stated the FOIA materials requested are copyright protected, and while I'm not authorized to make copies, you may review these. However, I was not allowed to take photos and make actual copies per Maine law. You may also remember a Grant childishly called 911 because of a selfie photo. Chair Euler, why are school lawyers Drummond Woodson charging the taxpayers to use a government agency to stop citizens from being able to copy public documents, public information, paid for by those very same taxpayers? You, Chair Euler, are paying Drummond Woodson to offer recommendations to illegally police their copyrighted materials. It's not even how federal copyright law works. Then you paid them to prepare themselves for my trial. Then you paid them again to weekly defend Micah Grant's illegal actions in court. Then you paid them to write an overly wordy letter that he sent me via email for a more recent FOIA request. It's very simple to comply with FOIA documentation in the law. An official must provide and access electronically stored public records, such as a printed document in the medium it's stored at the discretion of the requester. But Grant goes to Drummond Woodson for every FOIA issue at $350 an hour. It's an insane misuse of taxpayer funding. I'd estimate that you, Chair Euler, paid Drummond Woodson nearly $10,000 for my FOIA lawsuit alone. Twice your annual budget in one suit, all preventable by simply following the law. So I recommend this board demand that your employee, Micah Grant, provide a line-by-line, detailed by-minute breakdown of all the money taxpayers are paying Drummond Woodson for the last 2 years, and do that ongoing. It's all available, they bill out that way. So I don't want to have to put forth another Superior Court case, but I will, and this time I will name you Chair Euler in that lawsuit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up, Wendy Newell.
Wendy Newell, Hermon, Maine. My husband Greg Newell sent an email to the committee about a concern. He has been approached by many parents and citizens of this town. They stated the superintendent seems to never be in his office when they need to speak with him. My husband told these individuals that they needed to go through the proper channels and contact the school committee. They were very hesitant to reach out, all in fear of retaliation. Now I can totally see why they were scared to contact the majority of you. One of your committee members decided to forward my husband's email to the superintendent. The superintendent then reached out to my husband. This is highly inappropriate for any committee member to do. This tells me this committee isn't keeping things confidential. This is very alarming. This is why people are afraid to come to you about their concerns. Now, they definitely will not come to the majority of the committee in fear that their complaint will be forwarded to the person they're complaining about. Is it your policy to forward complaints to the complainant? If someone came to you about sexual harassment, would you then contact the sexual harasser and tell them the victim's filing a complaint on them? I have been all around the U.S. and in many different jobs, to include management positions. I have never worked for a company that would send the complaint to the abuser. You wonder why people do not contact you about school issues. It is because they do not trust that you will keep things confidential. Your job as a committee is to supervise and evaluate the superintendent. Why would you not take all complaints and issues seriously? What kind of standards are you setting for the students? In policy ADAA, the committee expects students to have ethical and responsible behavior. Do you think that it was ethical and responsible to pass a complaint on and not investigate? Thank you.
Nazona Newell.
Here, I'll hold it for you. How about that?
Chair, school committees, members, and superintendent, Nijona Newell, Hermon, Maine. My dad, Greg Newell, has a lot to say, so he asked me to say a few things for him. These are his words. I wish I could stress the critical nature of this very big problem. My guess is that individuals will be mad at me for briefing what is on these poster boards, and most likely will retaliate against me for it. But I want to see our teachers and students have a safe and working network and systems, which they do not currently have right now. I want teachers and students to be safe and to be able to use school devices. I would like you to be briefed by the DNS scan. Please ask them questions on how to proceed to make the district's network and systems safe and usable, and take steps to ensure our teachers and students are safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Greg Newell.
Get ready. Yeah, go on. Sorry about that. Chair, school committee members, and superintendent. Many people reached out to me and asked if I could explain things in a simpler term. In the IT world, a firewall represents a complete brick wall. Firewalls block hackers, viruses, etc. from getting into our network. In layman's terms, keep bad people and bad things out. DNS Albany IT report. Hermon School District firewall was good, but was not complete, not configured, set up correctly. In layman's terms, Hermon School District firewall will not keep bad people and bad things out. Flip. Antivirus software is a program designed to detect and remove viruses and other kinds of malicious software like ransomware from your computer, laptops, and servers. It is updated regularly. In layman's terms, software that stops bad things from happening. This program should be on all computers, laptops, and servers. It's like a security guard protecting your computer 24/7. DNS Albany IT report. Hermon School District has no antivirus software across the entire network and systems. In layman's terms, there's nothing stopping bad people doing anything they want on your child's computer. For example, a predator could install software to turn off your kid's camera and watch them. The operating system is the program that manages all other applications and programs in your computer. In layman's terms, it's the software that allows everything to run on your computer. DNS Albany IT report. The majority of Hermon School District systems, laptops, take your information, money, spying you, among many other things. When this school district was attacked by ransomware in November 2023, it was running Windows 2003. Software end of life was July 2014, 2015. Just hear that, Windows 2003 software, 20-year-old software. For the last 8 years, it was not supported or fixed. Current antivirus software cannot run on unsupported operating systems. The information stated is not from me, but from the evaluator of the Hermon School District's network and systems, DNS Albany. This school committee still has not gotten briefed by the company they hired to evaluate this district's network and systems. The school committee paid thousands of dollars for it, refuses to be briefed on the results, and what mitigation strategies DNS Albany recommends. Why won't this school committee get briefed? Thank you. Good job.
Thank you. Next up, Rebecca Nicholas.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Nicholas, and I am a resident of Levant. As a parent and taxpayer, I am concerned about the current reputation of the Hermon School District. If someone is looking to move to this area and would do an internet search for area schools, what would they find? Hermon has made the headlines, unfortunately, for all the wrong reasons. You will find articles about lawsuits, discrimination, division, incompetence, outdated computer systems, malware attacks, internet data, and safety risks. You can also find news about community division, school board members committed to the removal of parental rights regarding their students, violations of First Amendment rights, audits, and gross overspending of and abuse of school budgets. The latest legal fees from July to November already exceed $40,000, and we are not even halfway through the school year. At the current rate, just think about all the things our school could do with $80,000. At previous school board meetings, it was pointed out that the number of students in the district have unexpectedly decreased this year. Whether students chose to homeschool, transfer to other schools, or were expelled or dropped out, these things are concerning. As a resident of Levant, we are poorly represented in this district, not having the ability to vote for leaders in Hermon. Years ago, when my family moved here, almost 16 years ago, we did have school choice in Levant for high school. At some point that disappeared. I don't know when or how that happened. I believe it's time the citizens of Levant and Carmel should maybe pursue the return of school choice again. Are there positive things happening in Hermon? Of course there are. But how much weight would those things carry in someone's decision to send their children to school here? If people had a choice, would they choose Hermon?
Thank you. And that closes public comment. Next up, personnel.
The first position before you this evening is to employ Melissa Bean for the Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment. As you saw from our report, thrilled to recommend Mrs. Bean. She has served in the district in a variety of academic professional capacities for the last 20 years, and I think she, I know the interview committee would agree with me, she is going to be a tremendous asset at the central office. I've had the opportunity to work with her personally for several years at the middle school, and I can't say enough good about Melissa. I think she is going to, and I know some of the comments that have come in the last couple of months regarding curriculum goals, having a curriculum committee, looking at test scores, those are all things that are in her wheelhouse that she's worked at, whether it's at the middle school, whether it's been at the high school, even at the elementary school. So I know that those are some conversations that I've had with her about getting that committee started and bringing some of those presentations forward. So again, I'm just really excited to nominate her or to bring her to you for employment, and again, Melissa Bean for the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment position.
I make a motion to approve the recommendation for Melissa Bean as Director of Curriculum. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Next up.
And the second position is for food service director, and I'm pleased to nominate Jennifer Clavette. Jennifer has been working in the district for the last 18 months in our food service program. The interview committee and myself were really impressed with some of her background in regards to finance. And it's, you know, when you interview someone and you kind of ask them about what direction would you take the program in, it's always interesting to hear those answers, you know, their evaluation of how it's currently being done. While there's a lot of good in our program, she had some really interesting ideas on how to improve our food service program. So we're really excited about her, hopefully to get some stability to that position. We've had several directors over the last 10 years, so we think that she's somebody that's going to be a long-term fit and, again, really take our food service program. You know, it's done really well, and we think that she'll continue to do so, especially on the financial side.
Make a motion to approve Jennifer Clavette as the food services director. Do I have a second? Any discussion?
I was just wondering if Mrs. Clavette would be working at Hermon High School or for the Hermon High School, for the Hermon School District.
Yes, so the office for food service director is actually in the high school, and a lot of that time is spent in the high school because the office is here, but she would be district-wide, so it's for all students in the department.
Awesome, thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next up, and I think it's just an information only for the co-curriculars.
Yeah, we're in the slow season for coaching positions or extracurricular positions, and there's two that were put out to be filled, spelling bee by Ms. Manzo and volunteer assistant by Mr. Knowles, so just those two for your information.
Thank you. Next, I want to open it up for public comment again for the old business and new business items together. Do we have any public comment for the old or new business items on our agenda? All right, we'll close public comment. Next up, excuse of absence of school committee members from last time. It was Chris Goffin and Eva Benjamin. I make a motion to approve the absences. Do I have a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Next up is the second reading of policies. I make a motion to approve the second reading of policy GBP, earned paid leave. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Next up, I make a motion to approve the second reading of policy GBPR, earned paid leave administrative procedure. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Next up, I make a motion to approve the second reading of policy IKF, graduation requirements for a credit-based diploma. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Oh, sorry, Eva.
Where is that in the packet?
Right before the calendar. Do you find it? Do you have any questions on it?
We're not making any changes to the credits. You weren't here, so just to give you a brief overview, it is to allow students who are in a self-contained program, so obviously here at the high school, it's to allow those students who have completed all program requirements per their IEP to be able to march with their cohort class, but then be able to return to Hermon High School for a fifth year. So it gives them that option. They are still only allowed to do that participation in end-of-year ceremonies one time, so they would not be allowed to do it again in a year 5 or potentially a year 6 if they were to stay 2 extra years. But it allows them to, normally if they were going to stay at fifth had to march and walk in their 5th year. But this allows them to actually go through their class march this year, for example, if they were a senior this year, and then come back for a 5th year. So that's the overview. There's no credit changes or anything like that.
I did have a question. It's not exactly about this one, but when I read it, I thought that, so I know that Bangor High School allows students to graduate early, so they're allowed to march, say if they were supposed to graduate in 2024, but they had all their credits done, they're allowed to march and graduate with the class of 2023. Do you foresee that ever happening here at Hermon High School?
You would have to ask the school committee about that one. If that was a recommendation that Mr. Walsh felt was important, and not to put him on the spot, but if he felt like that was something that the school committee should look at, just like, for example, we're going to be bringing an attendance policy. Mrs. Bieberstein feels there's something in the attendance policy we need to look at. We'll be looking at it subcommittee next month and then bringing it to school committee for discussion in February. So it really, as long as somebody feels there's a need and asks the subcommittee to look at it, that's, usually graduation, that usually comes from Mr. Walsh typically, or the guidance department.
I saw him raise his hand.
We already have that policy in place.
Why am I here?
All right, any other discussion on policy IKF? All right, all those in favor? Motion carries. Next up, under new business, I make a motion to approve the first reading of the 2024-2025 school calendar.
Second.
Any discussion?
I do have one question. Of course, I can't put it right in front of me, but the June date, I just wanted to, prior to the second reading, make sure that there's the June date of local elections is sometimes a conflict. And I don't think that was, I didn't see that annotated on the calendar. I know I've got it in here somewhere, but if we could look at that prior to the second reading to make sure that, there is what the date is of the local elections. Usually, I believe it's the second Tuesday, which would be the 10th. And the last day of school for PADS would be the 11th. So just deconfliction that may need to happen there. We look at it ahead of time, that's all.
Yeah, I will check with Mrs. Cushman to see what date is scheduled for that June election of 2025. And if it happens to be, obviously, the 10th, we'll know it accordingly.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Any abstentions? Awesome, motion carries. Next up, we're doing a first reading of policies. I make a motion to approve the first reading to rescind, actually, policy CF, principles, general provisions.
A second.
Any discussion?
Just for clarification on why it's rescinding, I sat in the back, sat in the room. It's because those items that are within the policy are actually covered within the job description, correct? So we're not just getting rid of the policy. The information is still retained in the individual's job description.
Yes, there's a much more comprehensive description, which is their job description. So we're rescinding this policy in favor of the job description.
So it's redundant.
Yes, that's correct, right?
Any other discussion?
So it says that the principal will be responsible for anyone hired to perform a special task. What would make a special task differ from a normal task?
I don't know, Michael, that's why we're getting rid of the policy. Like I said, as you can see, Michael, from the date here of 73, that's where we have a lot of issues with some of these older policies. You'll see in the attendance to games. I don't know when or how that would ever happen. Maybe in 73 there was a definition for a special task versus a normal task. So that's one of the reasons why. Let's go with the job description.
All those in favor? Motion carries. Next up, I make a motion to approve the first reading of policy CHD administration in the absence of policy as amended. Do I have a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Next up, I make a motion to approve the first reading to rescind policy GCD, selection of teaching personnel.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Same discussion point, that that's being rescinded because it's covered in other policies, correct?
Yes, I did a follow-up to this. I assumed that our current GCF was this policy. We have a policy called Selection of Professional Hiring of Staff. And so that was intended. So at the time, I think that was, our GCF is from 2000, it's either 10 or 12. This was not rescinded at the same time. So this is just getting a policy that's already covered by GCF.
Any other discussion?
The only question I had was, the policy we have, I think, says professional personnel versus teaching. I don't know if it needed to be outlined, the GCF to say, I mean, professional to me it's teaching, but I just wasn't sure if that's why they left it, or, I mean, it's also outlined in their contract process, so.
I assumed it was professional due to the fact that many districts will, if they hire another professional staff, for example, occupational therapist, physical therapist, speech pathologist, right, so on and so forth, they often fall, they might fall on the teaching scale as well. So I think it was just an easier way to say, could be all people on the collective bargaining agreement that you might have, including teachers. I did not specifically ask why professional versus teacher, but that's my assumption.
Any other discussion? I just had a quick question. So what exactly does it mean when you're rescinding a document?
Taking it out of the policy and the procedure.
So is this policy going to be discarded completely because the information is covered in something else? Okay.
Good question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Next up, I make a motion to approve the first reading to rescind yet again policy JJCA, public admission fees for school performances, exhibits, and competition. Again, this one is from 1973, and it talked about admission will not be charged for school performances or activities held during the regular scheduled school day. So,
I'll second.
yeah, sorry, I did it during the discussion. Any discussion? Yeah.
The only thing I was thinking about, the harvest lunch and things like that, that parents participate and they pay for.
And this was saying that,
We're no longer gonna be charging for those things.
well, we're taking this out, saying that we could then charge, right? I mean, this policy that we're taking out was saying admission will not be charged. So by taking that out, that gives us the right, I read it, to be able to charge for a football game if it was at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I could be wrong, but that was how I interpreted it.
The spirit here is that if we were to have a game, for example, right, we all know that we had a very freakish week a couple weeks before Christmas break, especially in the fall, sometimes, or even the spring, sometimes things get scheduled earlier in the day. And so we're just saying that, like this is saying we would not charge for a type of exhibition, game, competition, etc. if it was during the school day. That's not true, we would charge. It is not intended to extend to like the harvest lunch, because that's a food service program. That's something that people have to be charged for. We can't give free, due to the federal nature of the program and the state nature of the program, we can't give away free lunch. So that would not be in the purview of this policy, or frankly, why it's being rescinded. So, but we would certainly charge if we had a game at 2 o'clock here on school grounds, which we would come to you for approval. Also, just so you know, we would request school committee approval before we schedule the game during the academic day.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, so how did you want to vote?
I guess I'll vote no.
Okay. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Next up, I make a motion to approve the first reading of policy JKAAR procedures on physical restraint and seclusion as amended. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Next up, I make a motion to approve the February school committee meeting date from February 5th to February 12th. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I think on the page 4, so what's the reason for that?
Yep. Both myself and Chris are not available for that, so we wouldn't be able to necessarily have a call. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Next, we're going to move to take in the administrative reports as presented, unless we had any specific questions. Micah, did you have some items I know you want to cover?
Yeah, I just want to add a couple of things to my report, or in addition to my report. The first item that I want to highlight is, excuse me here. Okay. At the tech committee meeting, we discussed the notification of disclosure, potential disclosure of student information. And at that time, the entire tech committee was in favor of sending out this notification to parents and guardians of those affected or potentially affected. We have closed our file with our attorneys. We have an attorney breach counselor who was appointed through the insurance company. And so I was able to inform them today that we have placed this document in all student cumulative files. So that was the required step that was asked of us. However, the tech committee, and I certainly agree with this, feels that we should provide additional information, specifically being proactive and notify parents and guardians. So what I told the tech committee was I would bring this item to you folks to get your feedback on sending out a formal mailing of this with our report cards. I think they go in a week, it could be 2, just kind of depends on when they get run and printed. But sending this information out in the report card with a note from myself saying this is what happened and here's the disclosure, here's the notification of potential disclosure and this is in your student's file. So that was my thought, to give it a little bit more information and formality, but certainly we would welcome any feedback to that or in addition to that.
I just wanted to say that I support sending it home by mail because the first semester does close in about 2 weeks, so that will get to parents promptly. And I'm worried that if we did any digital, sent the information out digitally, it would reach every member of the family, whereas the mail most likely would. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I mean, we do blast text and blast email, so I fully support that it be sent to email so parents can be notified sooner than 2 weeks. I mean, they've already not known for a couple of months. I mean, I support being done in the mail as well, in case parents don't get their emails, and there's issues that some parents don't get the email if they're split homes or however the system works. Parents have a right to know.
Why don't we just do both so that we're making everybody happy and getting the notice out quicker?
Great. Thank you. The other item that I'd like to add to my report, I reached out to our attorneys to get an update so that I could read this to the committee on where we stand on things. As you know, we have we have 3 lawsuits currently. Well, sorry, we have 2 lawsuits. So I'm just going to read this from our attorney. Hermon has been involved in 2 lawsuits with Sean Priority. The first, Hermon School Department versus Sean McBriarty, is the claim the school department brought against him, seeking to have the court enjoin him from bullying and harassing teachers by publishing defamatory comments about them online. Mr. McBriarty moved to dismiss this case. His motion was denied, and he has appealed the denial to the Maine Supreme Judicial Court, which is scheduled to hear the argument on the matter January 10th. We expect to receive a decision hopefully within a few months. The second is a FOA and First Amendment claim that Mr. McBriarty filed against the school department. We have moved to dismiss that claim, and the court granted that motion, so that case is no longer pending. The third case is brought by the Pines Church, alleging that the school department's refusal to give a long-term lease amounts to religious discrimination. The discovery period in that case is now over, and the next step in the process is for the parties to submit legal arguments to the court as to why they should prevail without the need for trial. Those motions are due on January 22nd, and we do not expect that the court will issue a decision on them for roughly 3 to 6 months.
Thank you. Next, we'll move.
Well, I have questions for the report.
Okay.
You had said on November 29th that the law firm did the retention of forensics. Who did they hire to do that forensic audit?
We forwarded them the DNS report.
So they didn't actually choose who did the work?
No.
So are you saying DNS Albany provided a forensic audit of the ransomware?
I'm saying that DNS Albany gave them all the information they had regarding the audit, and they investigated that. I do not know.
Who's they?
The attorney's office.
The attorney investigated the report, or they investigated? So they read the report and created a draft?
I don't know what their process is, but they requested a report from me, which I obviously gladly submitted, and then they responded back. You've seen that chain of emails on how we are to move forward.
In communicating with DNS Albany, the head of it, they said they don't do or provide any forensic work, deal with malware, ransomware, or Trojans, that it's a very niche area, and it's very expensive, and he would recommend going to an insurance company, and he doesn't even know who that they would recommend to use. So I'm curious how they could do some sort of forensic work when that's not even something that they provide.
Where are you seeing this in the superintendent's report?
The ransomware attack? So
But
asking
where are we
questions
seeing
based on
these
that.
specific questions? I'm just wondering why these questions weren't asked in tech committee.
This information I didn't have till tech committee.
I didn't have it until the tech committee.
I didn't have it until the tech committee. So I formulated these questions, yes.
You had it after the tech committee, or I'm confused.
I did not have the information from DNS Albany about what they do for work. I did not know about the FERPA notice from the attorney until the tech committee.
So these questions were asked in tech committee and just
I didn't have the
answers?
information until tech committee to then look for more information to get clarification. So the question is, they are not and do not specialize in anything malware, ransomware, Trojans, or viruses. So how could they do an audit and provide information to the attorney when they don't even specialize in that, according to the head office in New York?
Mrs. Keiser, I'm not sure why you're going out on your own and investigating this. I know that what I've told you is that we went through the ransomware attack. We brought in DNS Albany to help fix, mitigate, and stop that attack. They then provided their report to the attorney breach specialist per our insurance company. They have then said, they went through that report, they responded to me and said, here's the disclosure of potential disclosure of student information. This is what you are to do with it. Place it in every student CUME file. We have done that as of January 5th, and now the case is closed with them.
They don't do the work, so I don't know how they generated a report.
We brought them in to help us with that incident. So I'm not going to be able to answer you because I don't know why and how you went to New York or Albany or talked to those individuals. They came in and helped us with that, and they provided a report to our attorneys.
I'm just concerned that we, or someone chose to consult with who knows how much it costs, with someone who doesn't even specialize in this, and then act as though we have solved something. I want to be sure that it's done safely for the kids and the staff. The ransomware, the viruses are gone and cleaned out of there. If they don't specialize in this and it's such a niche area, how can we be assured that that happened?
What are you suggesting that we do?
Well, the same thing I've been suggesting for 2 years, that we hire a company who specializes in this and does an actual audit to the network and make sure that it isn't porous.
And what did you guys decide in tech committee was going to be done?
I brought forward and had emailed Mr. Grant at companies to choose from to send out to bid that did not get included in the bid.
Okay, we'll look.
I'm not really sure what the line of thought here is. I thought we were talking about this attack, and now we're talking about bids for penetrations and audits.
Because you're talking about that you brought them in for work, they weren't brought in for this. They were brought in to do a
They
mapping.
were brought in for this.
Well,
I did bring them in for this.
correct, you did after, but they weren't originally hired for that. That wasn't part of the RFP originally.
Yes, I'm aware of that. We had a ransomware attack, and we're not equipped to handle that on our own and figure out what was going on. So we brought in a specialist to help us,
But they're not.
but they are.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on.
Question.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Question on superintendent report. I think that what was written out here for facilities and finance did a good job, briefing what we did. One question on facilities. I know we spent a lot of time with the facilities director, and we made some recommendations on CIP projects, facility projects. I think one may be missing when we talked at the middle school about splitting or maybe dividing the library to create an additional classroom.
I believe, Mr. Keith, is that the reason it's not on this list is most of the work is going to be done in-house. So I think I was trying to capture bidding that is on the list to do this year. So, but I'll make sure that I didn't miss it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
With that in mind, I have a question. If it's going out for bid, why are we doing the work in-house? I'm confused.
Certain aspects of the job might have to be bid out. For example, moving a sprinkler, changing a heating system. Some of the work can be done in-house, building a wall, insulating, drywall, etc. Sometimes tiles, floors can be done in-house. Sometimes they have to go to bid due to the size and complexity. So part of a project might have to go out to bid.
I want to give a huge shout out to Jamie and everyone that works on the tuition rate, because that's a big deal to be able to have that increased yet again. So good work on that, Jamie. I know a lot goes into that. Any other questions on the finance report before we move on to committee reports?
The only question I had that I tried to ask at the subcommittee was about overseeing the finances and when we're spending past those line items. And the board should have some oversight and involvement about that. So when you see, even if it's part of the overall, say, school administration budget, if you, an admin, are putting things into the budget, they think that it's necessary to be there, and then we're robbing from one section to pay for another, then that other section is getting depleted or not getting done. And so I just really feel the committee should have better oversight of making sure we're being fiscally responsible when we see massive bills coming through. And that being said, back to the ransomware, if it was run through the insurance, I was curious seeing all those bills come through. Is the insurance not covering all of those? I don't know if Jamie could speak to that, or Mr. Grant. This is Youngblood, rather.
The insurance company does not cover a ransomware attack. However, they will assign an attorney breach counselor to you.
I know the town has a cyber policy where we're not under that?
No, we went through the same insurance company, Maine Municipal.
Okay, next up, facilities and track committee and safety committee. I know you guys had the opportunity to meet. Did you want to provide an update?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think I commented on it already. We met with facilities director, other building administrators, went through a lengthy list of immediate projects and long-term projects they would like to see, and made some recommendations to the finance committee on what we think we should do this year and put in the budget for next year.
Excellent. Thank you for all the work on that.
Mrs. Weather, can I just make a comment regarding one more thing in my report? Please note that due to the meeting being moved, there are, and a couple other scheduling conflicts, the trifecta of subcommittee meetings is not how it normally is. They won't be back to back to back. We have a January 30th finance and a January 30th policy subcommittee meeting, but we will do tech committee on February 5th. That's the next Tuesday. So just want to make people aware of that.
Thank you for highlighting
Yep.
that. Next, do we have an update on the finance committee?
Mrs. Weber,
Yes.
can I just ask a question on track? Do you have an updated date for when the track will be finished, if it will be finished in the spring of this year?
Mr. Thomas might know, he's here, but I think the river is going to be down in the spring when its temperatures stay above something for so many days. Do you have a date?
You're correct. As soon as the weather permits, it has to be 50 degrees and rising for them to put down the rubber. So as soon as that's possible, it will be done.
Okay. So late spring, probably. Remind me of the season.
Is it April, May?
Okay. You might get a little bit of time.
If it was
We
like last
try
April,
really
no.
hard.
If it was like last April, no. It was very unseasonable. But I know that they've been great to work with, and I'm sure that the track committee is obviously committed to moving as fast as possible. And hopefully,
I believe it's all tarred, it just doesn't have the rubber surface.
Which I've heard that the rubber has to set. Do you know how long that is?
2 days or 2 weeks? 2 weeks? I think he said 2 weeks.
All right, do we have a finance committee update?
Yeah, the finance committee met during a normal subcommittee night there last week. We covered some old business, reviewed the cost centers and cost center report, thanks to Mrs. Youngblood. And we're currently running 37% of our annual revenue, so we're running a little behind on our annual revenue, which is one of the reasons why the unassigned fund balance is currently working in our favor. We also discussed current unassigned fund balance and CIP priorities, as Mr. Keefe discussed, and that the facilities committee worked on to provide those CIP projects for us. And then under new business, we looked at the staffing requests from the schools, and the finance committee supports the current staffing request based upon pending, I should say, funding levels once we find out what the ED 279 would support. But at face value, we supported those staffing requests put forward by the principals, and then we reviewed the CIP projects that again were put forward by the facilities committee and how they would work into the budget. And then Mr. Grant went over a budget timeline, which included moving a proposal to move the next February regular meeting to 12th February, which would be the first reading of the budget to the full committee. Correct.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Is that scheduled to be our first reading?
I didn't hear that at the meeting, so can you say that again?
Brian,
So we'd be looking at March for the first reading.
yes.
So we had asked, and I had asked the last meeting via email, and you had said we were gonna talk about workshops as a whole board for that. And it wasn't on the agenda. So are you saying that that's in March?
No, I'm saying that our next finance subcommittee meeting will be on 30 January, as we just discussed, and that for the first full reading of the budget will be in March. The first reading of the budget will be in March. So somewhere between now and 1 March, we will work as a finance subcommittee to put together the budget workshop so that we can have all the data that we need, because as of right now, we don't have all the data that we need.
So you're still not doing a budget workshop like you used to, like they used to?
No, I mean, that's not true. What I said is we have not scheduled a workshop yet because we have not put all our information together yet. We should have all that information for the January 30th meeting, and then the finance subcommittee can work to put together the workshop timeline.
The only thing I would add is that I know that there have been several, or at least been, I send one out regularly, one follow regarding this month's legal bills. I understand that that number is higher than normal. Unfortunately, I have made the, and I said this in the finance subcommittee meeting, the committee knows exactly why that legal bill is what it is. We discussed that regarding a very sensitive legal matter. And right now, I am not allowed to elaborate on it any more than that. I look forward to getting through that and letting the public know what we have been dealing with. But right now, there's a sensitive legal matter that I cannot disclose, but have made the committee aware through executive session what the school department is currently working on right now. So I know that's higher than it normally is, and just want, again, the public to know that the school committee knows and has been briefed.
One of the questions that I wanted, and I heard it in public comment, and I wanted to either ask if somebody on the finance committee wanted to take it, or I'm happy to move forward. I had reviewed to see what the town's legal bills were as well, and I know that there's questions about us using Drummond Woodson. Should we ever look at looking at another attorney? And so one of my questions that I have is I'm kind of curious what the hourly rate is that Rudman Winchell charges. So I don't know if you wanted to take that, Ryan, and ask Kristen, or I can certainly ask her to follow up on my forward request.
I'll run that down for you.
Okay, awesome, thank you, I appreciate it. Next up, policy committee. January 30th is our next meeting. I know that we are looking at a lot of the old policies and going to start to really bring forward quite a few like we did, so we can get that caught up, so that's exciting.
Actually, so for policy, I have asked multiple times about a subcommittee policy, and you sort of started to work on that and got tabled or it disappeared. My concern with that is we aren't running our subcommittees as subcommittees. We're running some of them as advisory, some as standing committees. If you look at the actual definition of what a subcommittee is, it doesn't have other people on there. It's board members, so that should be outlined in a subcommittee policy, because at this point, it's getting very gray when you're not allowing certain people to communicate or be part of it. We're asking town councilors to be part of it. We're asking citizens to be part of it sometimes, not others, and it becomes a very risky discrimination scenario, and I just think that we really need to clarify what consists of a subcommittee policy.
That's certainly one that we are looking at considering. You're exactly right, so.
And also, that being said, the hiring committee, we've never as a board actually voted on who would be. I support a hiring committee, but we need to outline what is that, who does it consist of, and then just like we do all the other subcommittees.
What policy were you suggesting that we amend?
I'm saying we need to have a hiring, part of your subcommittee, you need to have a hiring committee so that we're actually voting for who's going to sit in on interviews, and that you guys aren't doing business and making decisions outside of the board meeting on that.
Again, don't make that policy for that.
I don't know what you mean by making decisions outside the board meeting. All hiring of teacher and educational technicians teachers and administrators come to the school committee. So I don't know what you mean by our hiring committee.
What I mean is for the board chair to direct a certain person to sit on the hiring committee without board, that's a decision made outside of the board. We need to vote who sits on a hiring committee, who's part of that, so it's always the same. So anytime somebody applies, they're going through the same process each and every time, so that also isn't a discriminatory process, so that beginning to end. So if they're sitting on one interview, they should be sitting on both interviews. If it's one committee member and then another committee member, it's very inconsistent. And it was done without board approval, full board approval.
Again, I'm not 100% sure what you're talking about, but I know as we work, the administrators have a process of hiring that they go through at their level. They then make recommendations to me. I then interview those individuals with people in my committee, and I make those recommendations to you all for approval. So I'm not looking to have school committee members on hiring committees for teachers because they come to you.
You did just use that process and had a board member sit in on some of those interviews.
Yes, for curriculum coordinator. Yes, that's correct.
Nope, for IT. That's what I was
Oh,
told.
sorry. Yes, for IT. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Did you use that same process for the coordinator?
No. Is that a problem with you?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is it should be the same process so that it's consistent for people who apply, so they're not being treated differently.
With nobody outside of that, it's one position. It's not about treated differently. Every position, there's a different process depending on what the needs of the district are, what the position is, what the job description is, what unit they might be a part of. So doing something, as long as it's consistent to, for example, IT, that was a consistent process for every candidate that was involved. Just like it's a different process, but it's consistent for curriculum coordinator.
I think it should be outlined as a subcommittee, and that way it's consistent. Mr. Vinziano and I actually advocated for this at the beginning of July, when we were talking about subcommittee meetings, as well as our curriculum committee.
We did, but Mr. Grant, I'd like to correct terms, because terms mean things, I guess. The process didn't change. The policy states that the superintendent can make or makes a panel. It doesn't define a panel. No, the process requires the panel, but it doesn't describe what the panel consists of. So I know it's kind of skirting the subject, but when you say you used a different process, we didn't actually use a different hiring process. It's that you used a panel and a different process. It's just the makeup of the panel, you have the discretion on the makeup of the panel. It doesn't mean you use a different process, right?
So when Ms. Euler recommended that you sit on that panel, and no one else,
I think we gotta just be careful of some of the words that we're using and the fact that I, suggested that. And so what is it that you're trying to get at that you would like to have us do moving forward?
again, I would like a subcommittee policy that defines what that policy consists of. Is it a subcommittee? Is it a standing committee? Is it a workshop committee? Because
A subcommittee policy for what? Like you want a hiring subcommittee or what is it that you're asking for?
Subcommittee policy. So I'm asking for. So like a policy that outlines what the subcommittee consists of. MSMA has a sample policy. And because the hiring committee can be one of the subcommittees. So
you're asking for both the subcommittee policy and the creation of a hiring subcommittee?
part of all of the discussion, yes.
Okay, that's clear.
Okay, that's a suggestion. Anything else for the policy committee?
As you know, parents have reached out with concerns regarding some sports and inconsistencies there as well, and I'm not sure if they have a policy that outlines, and I don't know, this is not my wheelhouse, so I'm just sharing what was shared. If we need something to outline how teams are operating and rules, I don't know. Again, it's a discussion that I'd like to see come forward of how players are moving up and down and everyone's being treated fairly.
I don't believe that this is appropriate for discussion at the school committee level. I know that the athletic director meets with parents, has an informational night to talk to them about how to file a complaint if they're upset about a coach or playing time.
I'll stop you because I don't mean to be rude, but I'm not discussing that. What I'm discussing is there a policy or can we create one that creates a guide for coaches? So
They're supervised by the athletic director, who is then bound by policy, who's supervised by me, who is bound by policy.
So when I'm asking for a policy that outlines how those programs operate.
We have athletic policies on sportsmanship, conduct, coaches' evaluation, feedback, complaints.
But there's nothing there that outlines if you're trying out for something and you're being moved up and down, and you're familiar with it. That's all I'm saying. You're not willing to have a discussion. It's
To have a policy about players and the teams that they're playing on and whether somebody should be JV or somebody should be varsity or they got moved down and put that in policy.
I'm bringing the idea forward as a discussion. Yes.
Yeah, I know I would not be in favor of a policy that dictates how coaches move players at the varsity level or sub-varsity level. No, not at all. I think that's micromanaging on the board's part.
So the players that aren't getting any play time.
We shouldn't be talking about playing time here at the board level.
Ms. Kaiser, just as a student and an athlete at Hermon High School, I know a lot of students who were varsity level who chose to drop down to JV for the playing time, and that was a decision between them and their coach. I also know students who were moved up to the varsity level and they still received playing time. I think it's really just dependent on the individual and the team and the coach, so I don't know if policy would be able to outline that since it's so unique to each student.
Thank you, Lisa. Next, we're going to move on to the tech committee. Did we have an update? Usually you send it, usually take minutes.
My notes, I'll go through the notes. Technology Subcommittee met on Tuesday. We reviewed the main school library network and the transfer to the MSLN. It's been delayed a month due to external IP addresses that are needed, and to see if the current fiber connection is what is needed to do the transition over to MSLN. The school is currently on a month-to-month use of First Light as a remaining internet provider. So we're not contractually bound, it's just a month-to-month for them to provide internet until MSLN is switched over. We also discussed the new Frontline Information Technology Department inventory software. The Frontline software has been purchased and is being installed. The next step is for training to be able to use the system's full abilities, and the Frontline that we purchased will sync PowerSchool and provide inventory and help desk information for our IT department. And then we discussed the main DOE PowerSchool update ransomware, which was covered by Mr. Grant in the superintendent's report. And then we had the introduction of the new Director of Information Technology, Mr. Bridges. It was nice to meet him. We had a presentation by Vodavi Technologies, and they provided networking solutions through Aruba and HP that could be used for some of our issues that we have. And that will be looked at in the future once the IT department can put together a IT plan that supports the IT goals that our school committee put forth for them, because we really need an RFP before we can start looking at vendors. And then we had discussion of the school committee IT goal as a blueprint or a framework, I should say, for Mr. Bridges to formulate the technology modernization plan. The modernization plan is due to the tech committee and the school committee for 1 March. And it, as we agreed to in the school committee goals, it will be a modernization plan that will address all the issues outlined in the DNS Albany audit within 18 months, which would bring us to August of 2026. And Mr. Bridges is working on that plan.
Thank you.
I did have a question with the technology. I noticed when I was looking at the warrants that the bill still consists of that other connection that doesn't belong to the school that's near like the Bangor Hermon line. So it's nearly $500 a month. I know it doesn't seem like much, but with a $4,200 bill and an unclear start time for MSLN, I don't know why we're still paying for that if it's not active or no longer using it, all those things people keep saying.
Did you ask that question while you were signing the warrants?
I didn't ask that question, I've asked it before, and I was told it no longer works, and then it was the contract was still going on, and it was gonna end in December, and I saw it the last one.
I just would encourage while you're signing perhaps to ask at that time, because it's not a question I'm able to answer right now.
If the contract ended in December, though, we see it through January, we billed for December and January.
That's something that I can look into, ask Mr. Bridges to verify that we will not be billed for that redundant circuit in January.
Haley, did you have anything to add for the tech committee?
The only thing I guess I would have to add is they had the executive session that Mr. Grant was going to bring forward, so we could go over as a committee the plan for technology and what that report consisted of. There were reports that I didn't receive that were in that, and I just think we should still continue to have.
I didn't have an executive session.
You didn't have it. What I was saying is you canceled it. So and then we never followed up on having that discussion of what's going on, what are we doing going forward.
So when you asked the question at the next tech committee that you sat on, what was the answer that you got for that?
When I send emails and ask for these meetings to exist and I don't get replies,
It's an opportunity to discuss it in tech, and that's where it was lying. So I just wondered when you asked about it next time, what was the answer that you got?
I have yet to have a response. Why as a committee wouldn't we want to know what's going on so we can plan, especially with the budget?
And I'm asking what you read.
What's that?
Have you read that report, right?
When I read the report the first time and then I went back a second time, there was actually a whole nother report in there, but it didn't have the ransomware attack in there.
It wouldn't be in there. That was not part of their audit.
I believe I can't speak for you, Haley. But what I think you saw is what I saw. Your first report was the report of their findings. And then I believe it was almost a month later, there was a second report that was with their recommendations. So there's actually 2 documents that are paper-clipped or stapled together. So what I just heard from you is that you went in and read them as 2 separate documents. When I went in and looked at them, I read them as 1 document. But they were distinctly 2 different sheets. One was the findings, the other one was the results.
So thank you for not speaking for me, because what I am telling you is when I went in the first time, there was 1 set of information. And a statement was made about a serious situation, and if I had read the reports, I would have known. So I thought, no, I didn't see that, I will go back. So I went back and I asked for the reports again, and there was a whole extra packet of information in there that wasn't there the first time. Also, still didn't have that serious situation in there. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, and that report was published prior to the ransomware. Correct, Mr. Grant? So
At that point, when we were having the discussion, it was November 28th, I think, that Tuesday. So I went back. My point is, ransomware aside, we have never gone over that report as a committee to discuss what it says or what we're doing. I understand that some of you know the plan, I don't, and I'm just asking for us all to know.
What is the tech committee suggesting for us to do for that?
I don't even get asked about the agenda for tech committee. I don't even get to put things on.
This is the opportunity to be able to talk about this, so that's why I'm asking you what you have for ideas. Being a part of that committee.
My idea is that we all meet as a committee in executive session to discuss what the report says. Okay. Why wouldn't you want to know so we know what we're dealing with and what we're doing going forward? How is this being fixed?
As I said in tech committee, it's being fixed with our new director who has the report, has reviewed it, and is beginning to develop an RFP and speaking with other vendors who can help us. And he will bring recommendations to the tech committee, because that's why you hired him, to the tech committee to say, we should do a complete lift and shift and replace, or we should put the money in to fix this, and he will make those recommendations. The committee, to be briefed on a report of, essentially what they're really not going to know anything about. They hired a tech director to do that, and that's what the tech director is going to do, and that's what I stated on Tuesday, is he will read the report, he will make the recommendations to the tech committee, who will then make the recommendations to the school committee.
So we had an executive session canceled, which you at that time thought it was important for us all to know.
We also didn't have a tech director then, and we do now, who I have complete confidence in his abilities and his knowledge and his connections to figure out what the best direction for us is to move forward. That's why I hired him.
I'm not opposed to an executive session. I guess I'm looking down the line of, we've all read the report, do we need to put ourselves in a room alone and look at each other and read the report again? No, I mean, it was fairly clear to me, so I'm not sure what an executive session would accomplish. So I'm not opposed to it, I just don't see the utility in it. If we took the report and read it and took it at its face value, were there any questions from that report that you feel that were ambiguous or that you needed answered? Well, if you have any, then you can ask it. But I read the report. Most of it is actually moved now as a don't give the report out because the information has been put out in so many different ways. If you put it all together, you basically have the report anyways. But I don't think any of us, like I said, I'm not opposed to an executive session. I just don't see the utility of it.
Why not address your concerns here?
Because if the superintendent felt it was executive session worthy and that it was confidential, I wouldn't share that information here. That's why.
The superintendent availed it to the entire school committee, and this entire school committee has had the opportunity, still has the opportunity to come in and read the report.
It was so secret that you wouldn't email it to me. I had to come in to read it.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's my report. You are coming in, reading the report, so you know what's in it.
So therefore, to answer your question, I wouldn't talk about it because if it contains confidential information, then I wouldn't say that here.
Next, do we have any update on Spruce?
We have a meeting scheduled that was canceled due to the winter storm, and it's rescheduled for the second or third week of January.
Awesome, thank you. Possible future agenda items, we'll go around. Chris?
I am all set.
Jesse?
All set.
Haley?
Subcommittee policy.
Anything else? Brian?
No, just to confirm, we moved our date to the 12th, correct?
Correct.
And then on the 30th, we're still having policy and finance, and on the 5th of February, we're having our technology.
Correct. Debbie? Eva? Michael? Next, I make a motion to approve the next 6 warrants as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I did have a question. I noticed that through that and the legal bills that you said that were forward, I talked about a memorandum of understanding that had gone through with the NS Albany and I saw quite a massive amount of legal bills for work they're conducting, and I'm just, again, curious why we're not making sure that we're going through a bid process when we're going beyond what the original agreement was with the inequality.
Due to the federal nature of the investigation, it is not something that can be bid out. It is, you can't predict how much the technology side of the investigation is going to cost, and the district has to remove itself from being privy to collecting that information. Therefore, it needs a third-party vendor.
It needs a what, I'm sorry, I
A
missed.
third-party vendor. It has to insulate itself.
Any other discussion?
And I would prefer to not say any more than that, because I feel like that's honestly too much.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. I move to adjourn the meeting at 7:55. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Adjourn. Yes.